Mr. Dusmanta Pradhan is the EVP Technology Wireline Network at Vodafone Idea Limited. He is the head of Wireline Network Planning Project and Operations at Vodafone Idea and has over 28 years of experience in IP, MPLS, DWDN, OTN, DCI, submarine landing stations, IoT, OSS, automation, enterprise, and mobility services. His competency includes scale network integration, people transformation, and large-scale change implementation. So, please. We have Mr. Girish Bhatia, Sienna India, who is the Senior Director, Sales Engineering. Mr. Girish Bhatia has over 17 years of experience. He excels in supporting sales teams by building technical solutions, identifying opportunities, and presenting to customers. Girish manages bids for telecom operators, ensures technical compliance, and coordinates bid preparation. Welcome to the panel, sir. Next in line, we have Mr. Thomas Naveen, who is the Public Policy Director, Connectivity and Access, Meta. All right. So we have Mr. Ritesh Mukherjee from DriveNets, who is the Head of Product Strategy and Innovation. Mr. Ritesh has held key leadership roles at some of industry's leading companies. As a Senior VP and GM at Inseego, he oversaw product design, solutions engineering, technical marketing, and customer experience. Now at Reliance Jio, he managed a global portfolio of marketing leading enterprise solutions as the President of Enterprise. As VP of Product Management at 128 Technology, now acquired by Juniper Networks, he led SD-WAN and cloud development. Previously, he was a product manager leader at Cisco, leading the Software Operating Systems Group. Mr. Ritesh's leadership has been instrumental in engineering some of the largest deployments of enterprise and operators networks globally. Mr. Ritesh shares his computer network and security expertise as an adjunct faculty member at the Northeastern University and the Benjamin Franklin Cummins Institute of Technology and holds a PhD in computer. Mr. Ritesh, thank you. Last but not the least, we have Ms. Sonika Bajaj, Partner Markets. Sonika is a partner with our clients and marketing team with a focus on the TMT sector and leads the TMT EMA Center of Excellence for KPMG globally. She has over 24 years of experience in audit, deal consulting, and marketing functions. Sonika has also worked with various clients in the TMT space, aiding their strategic and operational initiatives. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Maybe let me start by thanking IMC for creating this wonderful forum. I think today has been a very exciting session with hearing from Mr. Modi himself on the vision that he has of India being a digital first nation. And clearly the panelists over here, I think are great contributors to this vision. So on behalf of myself and the panelists, I would like to thank IMC for this opportunity. And, before we just, start, we all have seen and heard today about 5G's dominance in India. And while 5G is, I've got telcos, operators on my right, both of them are kind of focusing on the deployment. And I think we're already seeing interest in some of the 5G Advanced, 6G, those kind of technologies. And all of these technologies together with IoT, AI, there's a whole new era of technological disruption that's happening, for which infrastructure plays a critical role. And the key pillars of this digital infrastructure are the data center and the cloud availability. So without further ado, I would be very keen to hearing esteemed panelists' views on how cloud and data center is supporting the connectivity and some of the great initiatives that our telco operators and OEMs and service providers are kind of taking in creating this a connected nation. So maybe just to start off, Yogesh, maybe I'll start off with you. Um, 5G is more than just fast speeds, right? It requires latency requirements. It has significant complex networking solutioning that's required. So how do you see cloud and data center play an enabling role as you're kind of expanding your network initiatives?
Yeah, I think it's a very relevant question. Um, if if I look at a few years back, you would probably be looking at, you know, people trying to set up things in their own data center, not looking at, basically planning for capacity in the near short term. But that's not true anymore. I mean, these, if you, based on what you said about today's session, right? Where we are going as a country. Uh, the kind of expansion that you would see is transcending all planning and budgeting, whatever whoever has done, right? So, if you look at the 5G rollout itself, of course, we made huge progress there. But it's not just 5G; it's what comes with 5G, right? There are a lot of value-added services that are dependent on this rollout, right? So, the key thing being, how do you, once you've deployed these networks, how do you manage these networks? How do you scale them? How do you bring in growth within a short span of time? How do you then ensure that these networks are, self-managed almost, right? And how do you ensure that the services that depend on them. Now, this could even be transient data centers. I'm talking about edge. When you look at edge, now we are not even constraining ourselves to a single data center. We are expanding our horizons to beyond, a few data centers. We're looking at, maybe across towns, across cities, across even geographies. So I think the cloud and data center is the underpinning, I would say, building blocks, and having a data center or having a cloud like or a hyperscaler like infrastructure is very, very critical for this. So today we would be looking at, a very simple service, but tomorrow we are looking at even building our own large language models or any of that sort, right? And that needs uh, that needs hyperscaler kind of an infrastructure. So I would think, planning or maybe ensuring that your data center scales as per your needs, as per the needs of your end users. That's the key thing. And we believe that planning for today or planning for tomorrow or planning for even 1 year or 2 years is not going to be the way forward. It's about planning to be on demand, right? I would say you would need infrastructure, or you would need capacity on demand, and that would need to be there now. I think that's the key thing that we believe in, and that's what we are planning for, right? We've implemented the cloud and the capacity growth in a way that it can really scale based on whatever growth projections that we can see.
Thank you so much. Very relevant inputs, Yogesh. Since we are on topic of telecom operators, maybe this month I'll come to you. I think some telco operators and hyperscalers and data centers, I think they share more of a symbiotic relationship where not only are you guys consuming their services to kind of what Yogesh mentioned, in modernizing your network and your connectivity solutions. But I think they're also big consumers of telecom services, and both from a cloud and a data center perspective. So, do you want to share your experience on how do you see this demand emerging in Indian market?
Thank you for having me here first. Uh, this is a very interesting subject, what you mentioned, Sonika. Primarily, if you look at the OTTs or the hyperscaler, they have been there for a very long period of time. Initially, between telcos and OTTs, there used to be a lot of push and pull due to the business interest. But I think at the end of the day, you need to keep in mind what customer wants. Okay, customer wants best service experience, and both OTTs or hyperscaler and operator needs to work together to provide that. So they both need to coexist, and that is a fact. Okay, and there are reasons for why they should coexist. One, network as a service. Okay, so now network is no more just a technology platform, it is actually a service enabler. So anything what we see in the digital landscape, those are all services which is a platform provided by network. That is point number one. There are a lot of co-creation of products, okay, between this hyperscaler and operators. They are collaborating more. They are creating products which end user wants, right? That is second point. Third point is strategic alliances. So if you look at India, so earlier the data used to go out of India for your internet. Let's say you want caching experience, you want Google, Facebook, etc. Those things used to be available in, let's say, Singapore or some internet exchange point outside of India. But getting these hyperscalers in India has actually enabled the experience for my last mile customers. So that is why that is also a point. Now telco cannot create a network in India themselves. They don't have licensing. Okay, so they are depending upon the operators like us. Okay, so that's the third point. Fourth is if you look at the network operators requirement, like everybody talks about AI. So the scale and the volume of data what this hyperscaler handles, probably fraction of that we would be handling, maybe the billing information, etc. what we have. But I think there is a huge volume of data what they handle. So there are a lot of learning, how AI can help operators to kind of create performance differences between operator A to operator B. So there are a lot of synergies between hyperscaler as well as operator. They coexist due to the fact that end customer is the need of the hour. So how do you provide the best experience for your customers? That is what the matters. So I think these are more complementary thing than the competitions between them. So I think that's the point of view I have, Sonika, on this.
Lovely. And I think partnership and convergence is the way to go given the way customer demands are emerging. So very pertinent points. If I move on, maybe Girish to you, as Honorable Prime Minister also in the morning mentioned about his ambition to connect the Bharat or the rural India. So, I mean, obviously there is a big amount of effort that is being spent on expanding this network. So, what's your view, in your experience, how is cloud and data center and the hyperscalers kind of enabling some of these ambitions that the government has?
Thanks, Sonika. Thanks for the opportunity to be on the panel. Now, if you look at India, right, we are already doing or creating equality by connecting more than 1 billion people on mobility. Has to be wireless dominated because that's much easier to do in our current scenario. Government is also building a lot of fiber, right, to connect every Gram Panchayat. Now, if you look at how this has benefited us, if you look at how actually 4G picked up, right, the moment you gave access to people, they started using a lot of content. For an example, WhatsApp, right? The moment they started enabling higher attachments, you have WhatsApp being used for not only personal use but also for corporate use. That actually is was driving 4G traffic up. Similar cases with other applications, YouTube, the high definition enablement, that drove the 4G traffic up. A lot of other applications followed where when you give access to users, there is interest and they will come out with a use case to use that particular options. Now, when you talk about cloud and AI coupled with the connectivity, the content that we are talking about, right, that we plan to bring in, the models that will bring in, the learnings that models will actually take place when we move from inference to AI, this is going to be accessible to those people who are connected, right? And definitely it would include something like the medical industry, let's say the education industry. So it's going to make a big difference. See, right now, everybody has gone through COVID, right? And remember those times where we were all diagnosed by doctors remotely. Imagine if this can reach every nook and corner of country. That's going to help so many people. Imagine being able to use cloud and AI to not only learn something, but to actually skill yourself with that particular technology. So this is what is kind of scenario that would come in once we have cloud AI coupled with the connectivity. Thank you.
That's a brilliant future of India that I think we would all be very keen to see it soon. Yeah, yeah. Moving on, Ritesh, from an enterprise perspective, we're seeing now more and more mature adoption of use cases which are, more around machine-to-machine connectivity and more around, ultra-reliable, low-latency use cases. So how do you see, cloud and data centers play a role in some of these use cases as we mature in the adoption?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of having a few data centers and everything going into those data centers is great, and it worked well. But as the applications become more responsive, they need more. Like for example, if you have augmented reality and you want to render an image in front of a person's eyes before he moves his eyes somewhere else, you need to do that immediately and quickly and closer to the user. So what we are seeing now is people have these edge cases where they have data centers moving towards the edge, and they want to grow those at the edge. And of course, it's really helped the operators. They spoke before. They have increased bandwidth. They have reduced latency. They have given us, the ability to quickly connect. And so now we have the ability to quickly do that processing closer to the user and render, let's say, an image or anything else and get back to the user. That makes the application really responsive and leads to new use cases. Everyone talks about self-driving cars. My take is, if a car has to stop, don't ask, if you were driving a car, you wouldn't call your mom and ask, should I brake the car if there's a car in front? No, you would brake the car if there was a car. And so do the same thing. Don't rely on the network for that. But if you want other things like, augmented reality, driving directions, coordination between cars, smart cities, and so on, the edge is an excellent place to do that. The other thing is, we spoke about is costs and, planning and so on. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to spend a lot on spectrum, which every operator has to get spectrum to connect things, you want to reduce the cost of everything else to balance out your deployments. So the edge cannot be a huge edge. You cannot have GPUs, thousands of dollars or millions of dollars of GPUs at every edge. That's not realistic. You need to have white box routing, white box units where you can service chain things and you can deliver these applications closer to the user. And we're seeing now big operators, they're partnering with hyperscalers to move these edge boxes closer, like AWS CloudFront. They have got partnerships with AT&T, Comcast, and others, and even the US and the Indian operators are also doing partnerships to bring edge compute closer. So we're seeing that trend, and it's great. I mean, I personally like the idea also of having a lot of edges distributed. It reduces, the network traffic. It improves the security posture. Now you're not, concentrated in a single location. So all those other benefits as well come in, and we are seeing that happen. So I definitely see that trend in a hyperscaler and data centers going forward, moving to the edge. That's great for application responsiveness and for rich applications.
Thank you, Ritesh. I think India is clearly a land of innovation. I mean, where we're seeing cost economics play a big role in, or rather inhibitor to create edge data centers. I think the solutions that you're talking about, edge in a box, I think is a great alternative to that. Yeah, great. Maybe, Yogesh, if I come back to you, you talked about the use of cloud and data centers in deployment of 5G. Maybe if you can elaborate a little on how the network rollouts transforming. Again, some of these use cases that we talked about that requires significant complex network enablement. So from a cloud and a data center perspective, how would you see networks evolve?
Yeah, I think we are looking at an era where, you know, network rollout itself, right, is A, you know, fully automated, right? B, self-healing, right? And C, basically supports both traditional use cases as well as the future use cases, right? Now we're talking about not just having networks do only basic stuff like routing and things like that, or just be there for data traffic and things like that. We're also looking at networks being able to support the future use cases around AI, around, you know, AR, VR, because we are going to see that in the near future as 5G adoption, you know, kicks in. So I would say that the cloud, the cloud adoption and the data center or deployment of networks in the data center would follow what we have traditionally seen in the, you know, erstwhile hyperscalers type of movement, wherein every growth or every expansion of the network would be fully automated. And we are also looking at the network itself having some sort of enablement of AI within itself, right? Including analytics around, you know, how would network routing be done, right? How would network management, or how would network segmentation be done? And all these things that in the past, you know, probably would have been done in a different way. We are seeing that to be starting to become more and more automated, because that's the only way, you know, that we believe this will scale in the future. Because we're not talking about now we're talking about 5G, but you know what, I guess a couple of years ago 5G was not there, right? But same, I mean, if you talk about we are in 2024, maybe we get into 2026, you'll start talking about 6G, and then you got to reinvent yourself, you know. So I think this the fact that, you know, upgrades and you know, maintenance and scale or scaling is going to be automated, and that's what we believe in, right? And therefore, you know, having your design of your cloud and your data center, having that instrumentation to do all of that, that's very, very important, right? And that's what makes providers really being able to support all kinds of use cases, not being stuck in an era where, you know what, you fear upgrades, right? I think it's not about fearing upgrades anymore. It's not you don't need to fear deployments anymore, right? So it's going to happen as much as automated as possible.
It's a new norm now. Great. So, Dushmanta, coming to you, you know, we've seen, you know, all of these applications that we're talking about, a significant data surge, and all, you know, to manage those data, you know, there are again nuances around data privacy, security. So how does one decide whether, you know, some of these applications should be on cloud, should be on-prem? Again, when on cloud, should it be on public cloud, private cloud? Some of these decision points, if you can share some practical experience on how do you go about when deploying such solutions?
Yeah, I think very pertinent questions, because everything we are talking about cloud, so we must know how do we handle our data. You know, what you said rightly, there is a surge of data. So from an operator perspective, the way we decide, first is what is the sensitivity of that data, right? How sensitive it is, and what kind of security we are supposed to, you know, put on top of that data. So sensitivity and security is the topmost criteria, because that is what is going to derive the compliance requirement, risk and compliance requirement of the government, right? So there are data privacy rules, there are things which is clearly defined, what you should be having in India, or what you should, you know, what you can have outside of India. So therefore, security, sensitivity, risk, and compliance, that's a very, very key requirement for telco, okay? Third point is the BCP and business continuity and disaster recovery point. Okay, so when you know that your data is in cloud, so it is like available. So at any point of time, you can access that data from anywhere. Unlike in a on-prem where you may have in one location, and if something happens, then you lose that data. So you need to have the right architecture to decide whether the disaster recovery or the business continuity requirements are met, and then that is what you need to decide whether it is on-prem or you're moving the data to cloud. That's the third thing. Fourth one is performance. Okay, I spoke about user experience earlier. So everything is moving to edge, correct? So when you have every data moving to edge to provide the best experience to your end customer, you will have to assess, do you have those kind of facilities in India where you can have those data centers at the edge? Yes, we have evolved, we have come a long way, but then there are still a lot to do. Okay, so that is also a decision making criteria, whether you need to have on-prem or you need to move things to cloud, and what you need to move into cloud, or what you still maybe billing informations or the network signaling part, etc., you still wants to keep it. And the final one from an operator's perspective is the cost, right? So all that is fine, but then where is the business case? Okay, and that's going to drive your decision making ability as an operator. And probably I would just add the last point, which is about wrapping up everything together as a business case. Whether you want to, you need to decide some of these critical aspects of network. Probably based on these parameters, you need to qualify them, whether they qualify for putting it on cloud or you want to keep it on-prem. So these are the five critical parameters where operator is going to decide where to keep the data.
Thank you, Dusmanta. I think this is a great roadmap or a guideline that organizations can follow as they're embarking on the cloud journey. Thank you for that. If I can move on, Girish, we talked about a lot of AI applications. We talked about LLMs. All of those actually have a very significant and a very different infrastructure requirement. So we're talking about AI data centers. How do you see, is that a reality in India as of now? And if yes, or if it's building up, how do you see that evolve?
Thanks. See, that's a reality very much on the horizon and very fast. Now, if you look at the new data centers that are being built, and they are being built using GPUs, and if you actually go to YouTube and look at the difference in how a GPU performs and a CPU performs, so it's when a CPU performs, it's one at a time. There's a very nice video where a paint gun is actually printing a smiley, which is one at a time, where in one shot, a GPU-powered paint gun can actually print out a Mona Lisa at one go. So imagine that the processing, the amount of decisions that a GPU-based GC actually can take. So we are talking about tremendous amount of capacity. And at Sienna, we really are focusing at this aspect, where whatever new generation technology that we're investing in and we are actually rolling out increases the capacity by almost 30 to 50%, reduces the space power by almost 30 to 50%, so that this becomes actually cost competitive for service providers to implement. So that's number one, because all this is going to come down to how sustainable your new network or new deployments are going to be. If it's going to increase in cost, it's not going to get you the connectivity that you're asking for. If I can allude to what Yogesh said, right? We are talking about not only compute, but we're talking about on-demand connect and compute. We cannot expect our providers to build in fat pipes all across. You need to have a dynamic network where you can move capacities where and when required. So that's something that CN also focuses on. And on top of it, the biggest change in the connected infra that you will see is the convergence of layers. Now, gone are the times where you're looking at different layers carrying different kind of traffic. Very soon you will come across a scenario where you look at convergence of layers, which can actually help our partners to build a proper converged network. And these are the points that we look at from a connected or connectivity infra perspective. But if you also look at the other aspect, the power, I think this is something that the government needs to support us on, where we need to look at alternative power sources beyond the fossil fuel. So this is going to be the biggest change or the infra requirement when you come to AI and cloud data centers.
Thank you, Girish. I think that's a great segue to my next question. Ritesh, I mean, from your perspective, your experience, given that you have a global, experience, how do you see what interventions do we need to bring in as a nation, as a regulator, or as a policymaker? What would be your two bits on what can government do differently, what can organizations do differently to scale the data center ambition or the cloud ambition that the country has?
Absolutely. I mean, a government plays an important role in any sort of growth and fostering growth. I look at it in three buckets. One of them is obviously favorable, policies and guidelines. And when I say that, every hyperscaler or data center vendor is thinking he's asking for tax breaks. True, I am, but that's not the only thing. You need favorable conditions and also policies like how data is managed, how data is used. Dushmanta spoke about, the data cannot travel outside the country and so on. So those restrictions, how that gets managed when the data center is located in, let's say, India, and how it serves the world and so on. The other bucket is having good infrastructure available. Not just connectivity. Connectivity is obviously needed for running a data center, but also power, cooling, energy costs, green energy, land space, creating special economic zones. Those will all help. And finally, of course, the manpower, the engineering. Manpower, we don't have a problem. We have a lot of good engineers. We excel like crazy in that field. But also, how do we get equipment, the cost of equipment, how do we reduce those costs? Connecting 10,000 GPUs and 20,000 GPUs, yeah, it's easily doable, but you need, costs associated with those connections. You want solutions which grow organically rather than having to, deploy large chassis all the time. And you also need to be able to manage these huge deployments. So those all things, of course, matter. And I think those three buckets really determine where hyperscalers will build their data centers, where those will be located, and how they will sort of power the network or the applications behind it. And finally, I would say that we did that. I mean, India has done that in the past with, BPO and so on, call centers and so on, getting everything in India and sort of having the expertise here. We can do that with delivery of data centers as well. There's no reason where all the data centers cannot be located, or many data centers cannot be located, and we cannot serve the world right from India itself. I mean, Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India can also be extended to host in India, host everything in India. I mean, that is definitely a possibility, and I hope India is able to do that.
Great. Thank you so much. I think these are some very important policy interventions that you've kind of alluded to. I think with that, I would like to open the floor to the audience in case there are any specific questions, areas that you would want any of our panelists to kind of cover in. And we've got two hands up. Maybe if we can get the mics, please.
Good evening. I am Atul Jain from Broadband India Forum. My question is from Mr. Ritesh Mukherjee. In your last statement, you have said that why not India can become a hub of global for data centers. What is your view on unbundling of cable landing stations in India for carrying the bandwidth out of India so that you can create India as a hub of data centers?
True. I mean, I mentioned connectivity is obviously one of the most important things, and you highlighted correctly. To be the hub, obviously, you need great connectivity inside and outside. We have sea cables, it's true. Is it enough? It's enough to run some data centers. If you look at it, we were just talking about it. Some of the big hyperscalers are opening their regions in India now. But having said that, more is always better. The other thing is, where those data centers are located. Everyone wants to locate a data center in, let's say, Mumbai or Hyderabad, and which is great. They have great connectivity, and you can locate it there, sort of. I like the idea of having those data centers dispersed a little bit. The reason is we don't want to create a a disparity where there's a digital islands in India. Like we talked about it before, that some parts have great connectivity, some parts don't, and so on. So we want to spread that around. And to your point, to do that, you need connectivity everywhere. You definitely need fiber connectivity to run a data center. You can't have anything else. And that's why I recommend, the idea of having special economic zones where you can have this connectivity and you can have that connectivity available. And also to, take that connectivity outside India, obviously submarine cables are a must for sure.
Any other views
my,
from
my,
a panelist?
I'm sorry. My question was very specific to handling the cable landing stations in India so that data centers and hyperscalers are able to get the assets there directly, not going through the telcos.
I would attempt to answer
Yes,
that.
please.
Okay, so you're talking about REO charges, which is controlled today. Okay, because of the fact that, let's say, I can talk about VI. We have a cable landing station in Mumbai, which we call BBG, Bay of Bengal Gateway. So there is a policy today, which you rightly mentioned, that the REO is controlled, and therefore the cost goes up. Okay, and everybody has to pay REO charges, as a landing cost for that. But all the operators, we are working together with government to try to see how do we unbundle that, as you mentioned. But yes, till the time you reduce that cost, you remove that piece, your cost of internet is not going to go down. Okay. While I agree with Ritesh that a lot of contents we have localized by putting caching, peering, etc., but still 30% of the data goes out of India. Okay, so 70% while it gets localized, 30% goes out of India. When it goes out of India, it goes through cable landing station, and that's where the cost matters. So there is no straight cut answer at this point of time, but yes, all operators are working with, as a ISP, forum, we are working with government to see how we reduce it. There is a substantial work has happened. If you see last 5 years, the cost of IPLC has come down substantially, but there are a lot to do. I agree with you.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I understand you want to reduce the cost of and also not have the operators control the control. I understand that, but today, I mean, if you look at it, unfortunately the good rollouts and the good connectivity or the peering points and so on are controlled by the operators in India. So there's no easy way immediately to say, yeah, let's sort of disburse that. But I get your point that we need to get towards that, especially to not sort of have a monopoly. And I spoke before that I don't like the idea of having a few hyperscalers have all the control of the data as well. So it's not like we just want to attract the big hyperscalers and they put a data center there and we say, yeah, look at that, we did it. Both ways, I agree that we need to do something to disperse sort of that to other parts of the country or other people or other enterprises and so on, for sure.
See, I think when a cable is getting decided, it's the consortium who puts in the money. And usually one of the consortium partners who's a provider would partner for that particular landing station. And it would not be a scenario where one party will control everything. Everybody who's paid in the consortium will have equal or the amount of control that they have paid for the IRU, for the use of the cable. So basically, when you say unbundle, to reach a scenario, you'll have to have a single party who actually builds the entire cable and also builds the landing station and get the particular rights. That might not be the case, right? A lot of these cables are owned by the hyperscalers, but they have to partner with a local service provider who can get that permission. So the local service provider being there actually helps you to land traffic from that cable and bring it to the country. So it actually works both ways.
Yeah, good evening. This is Ankit Kumar. I'm a cloud security engineer. So my question is with Mr. Pradhan. So Pradhan, like we have multiples, data in cloud and like AWS, Azure, and GCP, and we are relying on these data centers. I mean these platforms to store our data and do our transactions on these data centers. So what's your point of view? Like, is it reliable? How we should rely on these data centers? Like, these are the third-party data centers. Earlier on, when we had on-prem data centers, we had some limitations, like we can't, scale these data centers, but we had that reliability. Like, our data centers are with us. No one can, corrupt the data centers, and no one can steal data from the data centers. But how we can rely on these platforms and how our data are secure? Like, we had a recent activity with CrowdStrike, right? There was a multiple globally outage because of some glitch or some changes at their end. So what do you think, and what's your point of view on relying on these cloud data centers?
Okay, so I'll give an example of telco. So if you look at our switching centers, okay, traditionally all the switching center is similar to all on-prem what you mentioned. Okay, so most of my core network, transmission network, IT, the billing, etc., gets stored locally at that switching center. Now, in last 5 years, I would say most of the core elements are going to cloud. Yes, not to the shared cloud or public cloud. It is private cloud within the telcos. Okay, what we are creating, uh, due to the fact that you need to make things little lighter and more accessible, and not depending upon that particular switching center, which may go down due to some natural issue, natural calamities, or any other issues. Okay, so there are reasons for moving. Like as I mentioned earlier, the business continuity and disaster recovery is one of the critical factor for us to move to from on-prem to a private cloud model. Similar to that, if you look at your requirement, depending upon what is your need, okay, whether it is sensitive data, as I said earlier, what kind of data it is, what is the reliability of the services, what you are looking at, who are your customer, okay, where those customers are, how far those customers are from your premises versus a cloud provider premises. And cloud premises could be always on, as you rightly said. They have more compute, etc. The cost per bit in the cloud setup, public cloud setup, could be a better advantages for you, and therefore cost is very, very important criteria for you to consider. I think those 4-5 things what I mentioned earlier, you need to evaluate your requirement based on those 4-5 parameter. And as telco, your application matters to you, so you know exactly what what criticality it carries. Based on those 4-5 parameters, I think you need to evaluate and take a call. But cost plays a much bigger role, even for me or for any enterprise customers like you.
Thanks.
Great. I think we're almost on the top of the hour. So maybe just a few concluding remarks from me. I think we had a great discussion. Thank you so much, the panelists over here. I think this was a very engaging conversation. And clearly with the 5G dominated future that we are foreseeing, digital infrastructure, specifically cloud and data center, are paramount for the success of 5G deployment. And specifically, if we're looking at the scale that we're talking about, making digital Bharat a possibility, cloud and data centers and the partnership with telcos, I think, is inevitable. It's really heartening to see the innovations that you guys are bringing in some of the deployments that is happening in India. So all in all, I think a partnership between service providers, cloud, and data centers is the future for driving some of the digital innovations that India needs. But there are very important considerations: security, cost. How do you maintain the balance between BCP and sovereignty? I think some of those aspects are very critical nuances that you need to think through as you embark on this journey. So with that, I would like to thank you everyone for your time, and thank you panelists again for the insights. Thank you.